It may be chilly outside and the trees may be bare, but there's one thing blooming in the River Region area this winter: university and local theater. There are at least 7 productions in various stages of development waiting in the wings. In this 2-part report, River Region Arts shines the spotlight on some of the shows taking center stage in the weeks ahead. In this edition, we focus on the Wetumpka Depot Players as they prepare to open A Southern Exposure. The Cloverdale Playhouse will offer Kander and Ebb's Tony Award-winning musical Cabaret, and Theater AUM brings Larry Kramer's seminal work about the AIDS crisis, The Normal Heart, to the region for the first time. There's a common thread that runs through all 3 of these vastly different productions. Each features stories of courage from the comedic to the tragic. Whether it's the simple story of a granddaughter finding the strength to journey out into the world on her own, or one man's crusade against a cataclysmic, devastating epidemic, to the inhabitants of a seedy nightclub seeking refuge from the political upheaval and the rise of the Nazi faction in 1930s Berlin, all 3 bring thought-provoking, life-altering stories to its audiences. First up, The Depot Players and A Southern Exposure. Written by Kelly Kingston Strayer and a 2009 Appalachian Festival of Plays and Playwrights winner, the play was first presented by The Depot in an edited version at the ActFest competition this past fall. The script, now restored to its complete unedited version, will get the full theatrical treatment when it premieres Thursday, January 24th.
I think our audiences will appreciate the fact that these women in the show are strong Southern women, and we can sort of celebrate their eccentricness. My own grandmother was very similar to Hattie in that she convinced me I should never leave the house without proper undergarments, and I had an aunt who believed everything she read in the National Enquirer. So they're quirky, they're fun, but they're real, and they're people that we identify with.
Hello!
Oh, Captain, we're in the kitchen! Oh, what do you know for the good of America?
All I know is on me, and I ain't telling.
Oh, you've been smoking cigarettes.
I was really fortunate to cast A Southern Exposure with really 4 strong actors. Hazel Jones plays the grandmother. She's one of our Depot founders and certainly identifies with Hattie, the Bible-thumping grandmother. She's just a hoot on stage, has great natural timing. The 2 eccentric sisters, Barbara Davis and Judy Savage, are just splendid. Madison Greenwood plays young Callie Mae, who's Hattie's granddaughter and is trying to find her own way in the world. So, splendid cast, lots of talent.
Both hilarious and heartbreaking, the play is set in a small town in Kentucky and focuses on Callie Bell, a young woman whose idea of love is so unrealistic it seems lifted from the pages of a Jane Austen novel. As Callie Bell wrestles with the idea of moving away from home, the story touches on the generation gap between Callie Bell and the women in her family, while touching hearts as the women forge relationships built on acceptance, understanding, and the fiercest kind of love. Each of these companies are in various stages of their current season. Theater AUM is nearing the end, which will culminate in the spring with the Pulitzer Prize-winning play Doubt, which was adapted for the screen in 2009 with a film starring Meryl Streep and Philip Seymour Hoffman.
I'll step outside the church! If that's what needs to be done, though the door should shut behind me!
For the Cloverdale Playhouse and the Wetumpka Depot Players, their seasons are just beginning.
Well, we have a fabulous 33rd season here at the Depot. After A Southern Exposure, we will go right into rehearsals for The Fantastics, which is a charming, really sweet musical. Right after that, Noises Off, and then we'll finish the fall with Blithe Spirit. We have 2 season extras. On February the 12th, I'll perform Love Letters with Greg Thornton, and then we're going to sneak in a revival of The Wedding from Hell in the summer just to celebrate the fact that that was recently published.
For now, audiences can celebrate the opening of another great season from the region's oldest local theater company by checking out A Southern Exposure. The production opens Thursday, January 24th for a 3-week run. Performance dates are January 24th through the 26th at 7:30 p.m., January 31st through February the 2nd at 7:30 p.m., February the 7th through the 9th also at 7:30 p.m., and February the 3rd at 2 p.m. Tickets can be purchased by going online to wetumpkadepot.com or calling the box office at 334-868-1440. Over at Theater AUM, director Val Winkleman is tackling a slightly more serious subject with Larry Kramer's The Normal Heart.
Scientists at the National Centers for Disease Control in Atlanta today released the results of a study which shows that the lifestyle of some male homosexuals has triggered an epidemic of a rare form of cancer.
Focusing on the rise of the HIV/AIDS crisis in New York City between 1981 and 1984, the play is largely autobiographical and seen through the eyes of Ned Weeks, a writer, activist, and founder of a prominent HIV advocacy group.
The past was awful, and those of us who are lucky enough to still be alive will never be able to convey the hideousness of what life was like then. Most of my friends died, and people dropped dead all over the place.
I remember the hospitals, and there were men lying on gurneys because they didn't have rooms for them, and their families had abandoned them, and people didn't know them.
Everybody was dying. To this point now that only 3 of my friends from the 80s are still alive. I've lost everybody to this epidemic.
We were going to more memorial services and funerals than birthday parties or celebratory events.
It felt like there was this extraordinary crisis happening, and yet at the same time nobody was paying attention.
I'm here at AUM as a director. I'm always looking for a piece of literature that stands on its own, that I can live with watching every day, and that the audience will get something out of, that's got some meat to it. I'm also always looking for because it's an educational opportunity, a really good opportunity for actors and designers, and this piece explores that beautifully. We have an audience of students, we have an audience of faculty, we have a pretty learned audience, and then just the community. We have a strong community support. So I try to do stuff that is kind of cutting edge and modern and isn't done anywhere else in the region, for instance.
The play features both students and actors from the local community world, including theater veteran Cushing Phillips, last seen in the Cloverdale Playhouse's production of Opus as Ned Weeks, the activist who leads the fight against the crisis.
It's cropping up in Paris, London, Germany, Canada, but New York City, our home, the one you're pledged to protect, has over half of everything.
The play is a continuing reminder of the destruction of HIV/AIDS.
Currently, right now, 1 American every 13 minutes is infected with the disease. In the United States, there are thousands of people. In Alabama, there are thousands of people. So even in Montgomery, I think, is the highest county in the state of AIDS-infected citizens. This is a story about AIDS, but it's also a love story. It's a political story. It's a science story. It's a story about journalism, and there's a lot of misconceptions about it. AIDS is not just in the gay community. It's gender neutral. It's color neutral. It can affect children, any age group. So there's a lot of misconceptions, especially in this age where all this bullying is occurring on a daily basis because of the internet. I think it just is going to help get the message out about what is, and the stigmas that are attached to it.
The production runs February 14th through the 16th and February 21st through the 23rd at 7:30 p.m. and Sunday, February 24th at 2 p.m. Tickets can be purchased at the box office the day of the performance or by contacting Katie Pearson at kpearso2@aum.edu or calling 334-244-3632. Across town, veteran director Randy Foster is also preparing for a February 14th opening for the Cloverdale Playhouse's first show of the season, the Tony Award-winning modern classic musical Cabaret. The growing political activism in the United States when Cabaret hit the stage in 1966, and its growth by 1972 when the film starring Liza Minnelli hit theaters, as well as theater producer Hal Prince's desire to break through to a new kind of socially responsible musical theater, all conspired to make Cabaret one of the most fascinating stage pieces of the 1960s and a show that speaks to our world in a new millennium more now than at any time since it first opened.
The story for us today, I think, is, and we're still fumbling with this even at the last minute, is that the world can either be a really intolerant place or the world can be a really tolerant place, and we make the decisions about that. We ultimately have the ability to change the world for good or allow the world to roll over us.
Set in Berlin in 1931 during the Weimar Republic as the Nazis are rising to power, The musical focuses on the seedy Kit Kat Club and two relationships. One between cabaret performer Sally Bowles and the young American writer Cliff Bradshaw, played by Sarah Carlton and Wes Milton. The other focuses on the doomed romance between German boarding house owner Fraulein Schneider and her elderly suitor Herr Schultz, a Jewish fruit vendor, played by theater veterans Eleanor Davis and Bill Garrett. Based on a book written by Christopher Isherwood, with music by John Cantor and lyrics by Fred Ebb, the production was revived in 1998 on Broadway, featuring choreography by Rob Marshall, the director of the film adaptation of another Cantor and Ebb hit, Chicago, which, coincidentally, was directed by Foster at the Montgomery Little Theater in 1988. The 1998 revival of Cabaret ran for 2,377 performances, making it the third longest-running revival in Broadway musical history, third only to O Calcutta and Chicago. It was this 1998 version of the show that drew Foster to the production, and the version River Region audiences will see when the show premieres.
It's a story about a world falling apart. And the movie and the earlier productions have centered primarily on Sally Bowles. And I love this version because it tells so many different stories, all sort of manipulated by a puppet master, the MC of the club. I love how tight and how clean and how integrated everything is in this version. It's the first act is much longer, it's much more story oriented, and then the second act is just flies. We go right from one thing to the next thing, and we see the whole world start to, it's almost like a maelstrom starts to go, and it's an amazing piece. It's an amazing piece of work, and it's got phenomenal music. You know, Cabaret and Maybe This Time, and a song that most people don't know called I Don't Care Much, that the beginning of it starts and I just sort of fall apart because it's so amazing. And where it happens in the show, everything about the way the show is constructed in this version is perfect, because you have a scene and you have a musical number that comments on that scene. And it's just perfectly constructed.
In addition to Carlton, Milton, Garrett, and Davis, the play will feature theater veterans Scott Page and Rhonda Krimp. Cabaret also welcomes Bill Cobb back to the stage as the MC. The role originated on Broadway and played in the film by Joel Grey and revived by Alan Cumming in the 1998 version.
Hello, stranger. Happy to see you.
River Region audiences can catch Cabaret February 14th through the 16th and February 21st through the 23rd at 7:30 p.m. and February 17th and 24th at 2 p.m. Tickets are available by going online to cloverdaleplayhouse.org or calling the box office at 334-262-1530.
I think that you should come and see theater because theater makes your life better. It doesn't matter whether you like it or not, but theater is one of those activities that humanizes us. And I think if we need any one thing in the whole world right now, we need more humanizing. We need to see that if you don't get along, there are real problems in the world.
I'm Mark Hunter for River Region Arts.